All right. Hello, everybody. This is Jochen Schlese with Eva Simmons. Hi, Eva. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Glad to be back. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank you. Same to you.
So today, in our series of the 14 reflex points and trigger points, we talk about point number 3, the thoracic trapezius. And I can see this often as a saddle maker, saddle fitter, area we talk a lot about, but when it comes to checking the saddle and checking if this saddle is a culprit and making this area sore is often overlooked or misunderstood. So I like to start by sharing my screen here, and just as a reminder for everybody what we talked about in the past. We talked about these reflex points, and today we focus on this triangle right here, the trapezius muscle. We can see on the left here, we see the superficial muscle group, the trapezius muscle here. You can see it's on top of the shoulder blade, and underneath there is the splenialis. And right over that area, it's an area what often gets pinched or hit by the saddle. So I have these videos or scans from a horse and from a saddle stand. So on today's technology, we have cool apps on our phone where we can take a 3D image of the horse's back, and we can then quickly identify by making a couple lines on the horse's back. So you go to the end of the mane, draw down, 8 inches approximately. Let me just spin that one more time around here. There you go. And when you're on that area, right here, end of the mane, go 8 inches down, go 4 inches forward. That's very often the widest part of the horse's shoulder. And when you go 4 inch on your first line down, and then straight back like this, you will see this triangle here. And in that area here, that's where we see a lot of behavior issues caused on the horse, by the saddle. Now, on the side here, I drew that red triangle right in here. And you can see that's the area what is super sensitive. And on many, many saddles, since hundreds and hundreds of years, when we build army saddle, Western saddles, and today's English saddles, we want to bridge that area. If not, then the saddle acts the same way as the stallion acts, and it bites the horses in the wither cup, and that causes then sometimes a lot of pain. Now, it starts off when you girth up the horse, because the saddle then gets pulled down like a vice grip on the horse's body, and that hurts a lot. I have seen this on so many occasions where people said, "Oh, I just put a pad on it." Well, a pad helps sometimes, but when the saddle is too narrow and it's already pinching in that area, often I amplify the problem. So if I'm looking at, let's use this Western tree I have back here. So here we had a Western tree, and from the front down to the start of the bars, often is 5 inches. You want 1 inch clearance for the withers, and then 4 inches away from that area I was talking about. Now, sometimes the tree width is too narrow, or the angle doesn't flare in the right angle like the shoulder is. That's why I do 2 lines, because when the horse's scapula rotates upwards, backwards, here we see a horse's scapular. Here's where the humerus attach. Here we see the spine of the scapular, and you see the spine kind of ends 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches, or starts 3 to 4 inches below there. And we have here, my fingers, the cartilage. So this in motion has to glide underneath. And sometimes I make the mistake as a rider to buy a saddle where the angle is too wide. You can see that angle is wider than the horse's angle. And he says, well, that at least doesn't hurt the horse. But it will come down like a nutcracker and pinches the horse. Eva, you as in your field, working on horses and working on riders, I guarantee you all of us had these problems in the trapezius area, from headaches to stiff shoulders, the mobility goes. When you work with riders, do you work sometimes on that area? And if so, what do you recommend?
So if I'm understanding the question properly, do I work with the riders on their trapezius and upper
Yes.
back muscles? 100%. What we've seen and what I've noticed over the years is excessive rounding of the shoulders, which is putting this in a constant flexion. And so when we are, one, either nervous, or two, tense, or three, have a weakness in retracting and lowering our shoulders, which is going to help extend our posture, it leads to so much, as you just mentioned, headaches, but also tension. And so another thing that I've noticed with riders in this specific case is one will be one trapezius, and there's 3 to 4 parts of our human trap. The cervical component of it will pinch a little bit, and the rider's ear will either dip down towards their shoulder a little bit, or it can add a little rotation, because when it's stretched to the opposite side, it doesn't feel good. So in these two things specifically alone, I've noticed that that can also lead to a shoulder rotation. Or it might not be the main culprit, but it definitely adds to the situation of that rotation. And when we rotate from there, then typically the independence or lack thereof affects the seat, and then it goes back into your job. So definitely we see the influence of the rider imbalance and or weakness or compensation affect the horse specifically.
Yes, and when I look at the, if we go back to the saddle part, if I look at the insertion of the spinalis, you can see there is that circle right there. That's where the rider's stirrup leather attaches to the stirrup bar.
Mm-hmm.
The cross section of the spinalis, right? Here's the one side of the withers, and then the trapezius is actually very thin compared to the spinalis. And the spinalis, as you see here, is attached to the base of the horse's neck and inserts here at the end of the withers. That's what I showed in the beginning of our talk, right here. It goes underneath the scapula, where the trapezius goes above it. So often when I come across the different, problem with saddle fitting, I say, how do we show people how important it is that the saddle fits not only in the length, we talked about this previously, but also in the cross-section of the trapezius. So I'm going to go the wrong direction here. Let me just go back up. Here we go. This is the cartilage what I was talking earlier. You can see here's the bone itself, and then you see the cartilage is on top of the shoulder blade right here. Here you see on the bottom right the D-ring of the saddle, and often misunderstood what is the angle of the tree and what's the width of the tree. So the width would be from D-ring all the way across to D-ring, and the angle, what I just explained earlier, what needs to match the angle of the shoulder, would be from the D-ring down to this tip. So compare that to the helmet width. And if the helmet is too wide, I can't see. If the helmet is too narrow, it sits too above. And if the helmet fits right in the width, but the sides don't fit, I ride around and my helmet sits crooked and I look like a goof. So the sides have to fit flush to my head and the width, similar to this. If we ignore that, then we run into the problems, as I mentioned earlier. And I understand you in England, Aoife, and extend your schooling and to work on horses now more and more, correct? Not just on humans.
More so the humans still, but I'm learning everything about the horses. So I have done dissections and things like that, absolutely, thus far, and continuously learning that from the distal limb all the way up to the whole leg. And that study will continue to go through the head and the musculature and everything else. So yes.
So can you explain to us, you might be too young, you don't know that the series, or maybe you do, from Star Trek, Dr. Spock, when
Absolutely.
grabs the people here in that fence. Why is this area so vulnerable on humans?
Well, it's funny because it leads you right back into what we're talking about, which is it's a trigger point. So when that trigger point is pinched, that it will inhibit the body's ability for them to operate upright, and it'll kind of take them into a slump. So exactly what you were literally talking about with the horse, you just brought right full circle into what takes place with the human. And when we, as I just said before, we have that tension or tightness up here, it leads to so many other issues throughout the body. As we all know, but need to be reminded of, everything in our body is connected. So if we have something that is out of whack or imbalanced, it will definitely affect another aspect of our body.
Right. And here's a video I like to share. And here you can see sitting further back in the saddle on the horse's back, and you can see how the scapular moves back. Boom. There it was. And you can see how the the triceps are contracting and all the muscle groups play. Now, when I see this picture, how the shoulder blade moves back in this area here, and I'm thinking of a saddle, which has a metal reinforced galled plate.
Mm-hmm.
How can these muscles in the shoulders move as free as we see here? And what will happen if it doesn't fit correctly to allow this freedom of movement? So if a horse strikes forward, that scapular rotates back. And right where the girl has her arm, that's the area we're trying to bridge. In other words, that metal plate has to bypass the spinalis and the trapezius. And we want to give the horse the freedom he needs in order for him to lift his neck up. So a typical behavior when you pinch a human on that, they duck down like this, correct? They shrug their shoulders. They're trying to eliminate that pain. Now, when the horse gets that behavior, then this here, you're looking at the front of the horse. This is the rib cage. And then you see the shoulder blade, upper arm, and the lower arm. These stringies here, these are the pectoralis muscles and then the serratus. They lift the entire rib cage of the horse. Now, you see the elbow of the horse and you see the sternum of the horse. When the horse gets pinched on the trigger point, on that trapezius we're talking about today, horses do the same thing as humans, except they drop the whole body. And you can see on this side how now the elbow and the sternum is one height. What many people do not know is this space here. Look at the rib and look at the upper arm shoulder joint. There is barely any space.
Yep.
If the horse is not pinched on the trapezius and lifts the rib cage, look how much space there is. Right here, and that was wonderful explained in the research from Dr. Ann, oh my God, I just have a brain fart. It will come back to me in a minute. And she says that some horses are intermittently lame because in that space I just highlighted is the brachial plexus, the main nerve string of the horse. So if the rib cage drops and the horse does not bring up the rib cage due to the fact it's been bitten or pinched by the saddle, the horse doesn't want to go forward. Think about kittens, right? They get numb when you grab them and lift them up. All quarter pets do that to carry their pets. Horses don't do that, but what horses do in the wild, when they fight for the herd, they bite the other stallions in the lower leg. That's where that nerve runs down, that yellow thing here, right there.
Yep.
And then they bite him in the lower neck, but once he has him in that trapezius area, this is what they do now since 35 million years. The horse will not go forward. And anybody who has seen stallions mount the mare to breed, it's an instinct, they go right for the neck. What does that do? It drops the rib cage as shown in this diagram. It pinches the brachial plexus and the horse freezes. Plus, it pulls the longissimus dorsi, so it opens the pelvis to be bred. Now, if I put a metal plate on that area, or I have a horse what is super sore, or a saddle what does not fit close to that area and doesn't bridge it, I have to ride for 20 minutes to make that nerve numb and for that area to go away. Could you explain to us if we would do this to our body? If I keep hitting it and hitting it and hitting it, it comes to a point where I don't feel the pain anymore. What actually happens in our human body? How we would deal with this pain, shut it down. And if we can't talk, we are horses now, right? And we can fight back, and I'm trying to survive, what would be the physiology going on in my body? Walk us through this.
I think the important part about what you just said specifically is what happens in inhibition. And what you talked about was with that pinching or that biting or that marker of movement, when you are stuck in this space here, everything else sort of slowly shuts down. And so as we are looking at in this slide right here, where things are lifted and things are lowered, it takes place with us as well. So imagine having a backpack that's unevenly loaded, and it's on your back for, let's say, while you're traveling throughout the airport. And you have other things and you're moving around, your range of motion, and you're going to be limited, right? So number one thing that happens is our shoulders end up lifting up to try and protect that by tensing the muscle, right? So just as you said, when the horse lowers down, or would we call it bear down in this moment, or just lowers?
Lowers down the base of the neck, yeah.
Lowers down the base of the neck. The human does the same thing. So we end up raising our shoulders up and bringing that closer to our body to help maneuver and handle that weight while we try to locomote and move around. Now, if you think about that taking place over a longer amount of time, which is just like what we're doing here with the saddle and the rider improperly positioned, it's also going to have an effect on us. So here, when we're like this, it's going to affect our posture, it's going to affect our balance, it's going to affect how we move. All of those different things are affected, to use the same word again. But most importantly, I want everyone to take away from this and know that what takes place when this is pinched, grabbed, or inhibited is the same thing that takes place in the horse. And in order for us to do better at that, we must understand what's going on in our own body by lowering our shoulders, bringing them down and back, and also lengthening through our posture, because when we have that and the properly fit saddle, we're going to do less of that pinching on our horse as well. And as you were just saying, I think another thing that I want to talk about is rein contact, because we also have a major impact on how our horse's neck is by the rein tension. And that has also been studied, and it's continuously being studied on the musculature that is affected when a horse is in excessive voker or behind the vertical. And so in these moments here, that muscle is also going to be shortened and unable for the shoulder blade and that to move freely, as we were watching in the video earlier.
Yeah, so a good friend of mine, Dr. Gerd Horschmann, talks about this a lot, what you just said. You know, so when the reins are too tight, the hyperextension. I mean, he was the #1 vet in Germany. He had 5 veterinarians working underneath him at the German Olympic Training Association. And he sold everything. He says, I cannot stand this. I didn't become a veterinarian to just numb the pain, to cut the nerves, burn the nerves, inject the horses. This has to stop. And he made it his lifetime mission. And he wrote 5 books, and he travels the world by teaching now back his first profession, a proper trainer. To say you can ride the horse supple and round. Supple and round. We want the horse to work with us. So here on this lower horse, you can see on the right, the horse's back is hollow.
Yep.
Okay, and they do this by nature since 35 million years. If you bite in this trapezius muscle, when we talk about it. So what if I ride hollow? What about the front legs? How long do you think they're going to last?
Right.
Right. So supple and round means that the horse lifts the base of the neck, okay, brings the haunches underneath. And this red line here, we see the dorsal ligament system. It's kind of the whole hanging apparatus, what carries the rider and the horse off the forehand, like we see on the horse on the bottom left. This is what we're trying to achieve. Now, this will not happen absolutely not happen when the horse gets pinched or hit on those reflex points. Now we see all kinds of money-making sports, and this is not to bash the dressage rider or the Tennessee walkers or the if it's English saddle or Western saddles. Looking at this horse on the bottom right, Aoife, you can tell that horse is not happy.
Yep.
That horse is on the severe pain. What does he do by nature to eliminate the pressure? He brings his legs together.
And drops the neck.
Yeah, right. So he's just trying to do it. But sometimes because of the sport we do, okay, either we force or we choose it. If it's extreme endurance, polo, trick riding, right, or cutting, the horse will have severe pressure on the back and sometimes becomes very uneven. Like you give a good example just 2 minutes ago with the backpack. But I love that more and more people such as yourself and veterinarian come up with the pain scale and understand at a certain pressure, and this is over 10 years old, 11 years now, at a certain pressure, the horse will lose the oxygen and the nutrition the muscle needs to stay supple.
Yep.
Right? And then we get into the stiff area. And we've seen, it's amazing how many horses we see with what veterinarian call the pain line. Some vets call this the fit line. Some trainers. But when you have a neck like this, or you have this line on the side, okay, that's CN cranial nerve 11, then the horse is in pain. Like here one more time. The horse is fit when the rib cage is up. The horse is unfit and in pain when he's down like this. And that's what I want to bring across today to listen to that our viewers understand. There's many horses out there who are loved and yet misunderstood when that trigger point, that triangle, is not properly maintained. And the maintained means the muscle needs to stay supple and flexible. And sometimes we need extra body worker. And I don't want to put you all in the same spot, but you kind of a body worker too. You work on the rider to keep them supple.
Correct.
So they're not sitting on there with stiff shoulders and
Absolutely
becoming this jackhammer on the horse. So that's why I love talking to you, because we have two beings, the rider and the horse. And
I wanted to add to what you just said. If we were to, and I want everyone who's looking at this to try this at home, which is to put your body in the quadruped position, hands on the floor, shoulders above the wrist, and the same thing for your knees, hips above your knees, and then just try and push your upper body away from the floor as much as possible. We call that protraction. And what you were talking about with this thoracic trapezius component of the horse, when their body shifts downward, that is retraction. And so in order for the core to be properly engaged on human and on the horse, it needs to be more retracted in a positive tension aspect. And if, like you were just saying, there's some sort of issue in that area, it's being pinched, it's being inhibited, then we're going to do the same thing. The horse is going to feel the same thing that you would feel if you were on your back. Let's say on that quadruped position and someone sat on it. If someone sat on your back, which most people are not used to, you're going to naturally dip down. And we also see that on my side of the thing with planks. When people are holding a steady plank, as time goes on, we see the shoulder blades dip down and they get really pronounced most of the time with people. And that is not safe for, one, the shoulder girdle, which we were talking about, and two, for the core to be engaged. So when the core is less active, in this case, it is harder for them to stabilize to the other areas of their body. So getting that horse to flex and to be engaged to the abdomen is going to be a whole lot more beneficial, for that partnership. But we also have to understand what we're asking of our horse, and that's exactly why we're doing this series today.
Yeah. And it's amazing what you just said. It reminded me of one of my trainers. He made us get off the saddle and go into that position, what you just said, except he says the horse walks on his middle nail.
Yep.
So we had to put our weight on our middle finger and keep this straight, right? Going forward, fetlock, straight. And he says, now go into a hollow position. I tell you, that tendon, I still feel it. Just the thought about it.
Yep.
He says, what would you need to do in order to decrease the pressure? By automatic bringing up the back, right? That's the same thing what we want to do with the horse. By bringing up the back, my hind leg came underneath and my weight became easier off my front head. So his point was, we as a rider have to engage the horse. Engaging the horse means bring the back up. But if I have a trigger point, what is then 35 million years here, biting by an ill-fitting saddle, I have to ride for 20 minutes that nerve numb before the horse will bring his hind leg underneath. And back then, when I rode a lot of different horses, I did not have time to ride 5-6 horses numb, because do the math. Right. So that's a lot of hours or minutes wasted. Yep. And you're riding upside down for a while. You cannot train pain and you cannot cheat nature. And that's, hopefully people understand. Just as I said earlier, we need to be supple. We have to have a pliable seat. We need to allow the horse to have the same in the equipment, the saddle. I mean, that's why we talk about this.
Absolutely.
You're helping me by explaining how we as the rider can help, or sometimes when we ignore our body, be the culprit.
Yes.
That's the best fitting saddle, but if you don't look after yourself.
Yes.
So I think that was a very good session today, and I hope people enjoyed. And I thank you very much for being here today, and looking forward to the next episode.
That makes two of us. Definitely looking forward to the next one. I love listening to your expertise and the experience that you've had for who knows how many years, who's counting, but all that you've learned and done over the years is really important. And thank you for us doing this series together, because talking about the missing component oftentimes in the equation is something that we are doing a little bit more, but in different ways. And I think us tackling this from the rider and horse perspective, based on you, which is the person who helps to fit both of those, is something that needs to be more mainstream in our industry.
Okay, you have a good day. I talk to you soon.
Thank you. Now, bye now.
Bye for now.